Whether we are there or not, ITSP Magazine still gets the best stories. Plenty of conferences and events spark our curiosity and allow us to start conversations with some of the world's brightest minds. In person or virtually, Sean Martin and Marco Ciappelli go on location and sit down with them at the intersection of technology, cybersecurity, and society. Together, we discover what the synergy of these three elements means for the future of humanity. ThreatLocker is a zero-trust endpoint protection platform, providing enterprise-level cybersecurity to organizations globally. With ThreatLocker, you only allow what you need and block everything else, including ransomware. Learn more at threatlocker.com.
All right.
Marco.
Sean.
I feel represented. Even though I'm not from Australia.
As a cybersecurity professional.
That's right.
I feel represented as a human using technology. There you go.
Important stuff. Somebody's looking after us citizens, and they represent many folks. I'm thrilled to have Ambassador Dowling on with us. Good to meet you, Dowling.
Thank you.
Ambassador.
Very great. Very good to meet you, and please call me Brendan.
All right. Brendan. Marco, you a few years back got to meet another ambassador.
Yeah.
When it wasn't,
I believe he was the first ambassador for Australia for cybersecurity, Dr. Tobias Felkin.
Yes.
And he was in Singapore. And at the time, I was like, wow, you exist. Like, people like you exist. And I was excited, being somebody that looked at society, politics, and all my background it is sociology. I was like, that's an important step.
Yes.
And here we are.
Well, and look,
what happened since?
It's explaining to my mother what a cybersecurity ambassador does was particularly challenging. And when she asked me where I would be posted to, and I said Canberra, that even added to the confusion.
Do you have the memes where this is what I look like, or think of myself in my role, and this is what my mother thinks?
That's right. Exactly.
That's really nice. Well, here's the first question. I mean, what for me is the first thing that comes in my mind. What has changed since? This was 2018.
Yeah. Look, I think a lot has changed. I think we have recognized in that time that cybersecurity is a core part of our foreign policy. So I think when Toby was in the role, it was a new idea. It was and I think it was a non-traditional idea to say that we should have a diplomat representing our interests into the cyber world. Nowadays, there are many people around the world who have the title of cyber ambassador, and that's a recognition that so much of our security, our prosperity exists because of the digital world, is shaped by the technology that we use, and unfortunately is threatened by malicious actors who take advantage of the digital technology-enabled world that we live in. So I think on the positive side of things, what has changed is that we recognise it's no longer an unusual idea. We recognise that actually cyber is a core part of our foreign policy. On the negative side, what has changed is that the world has become more dangerous in cyberspace. Malicious actors are more capable, and vulnerabilities are more widespread.
Yep.
Now, I don't know if you can speak to, I mean, I look at security from an operational perspective, speak to a lot of CISOs, and for them, the strength comes in the community.
Yes.
So the ability for them to have conversations off the record with each other. Here's what we're seeing, here's how we're responding, here's how it's impacting our businesses, how we speak to our board of directors and our executive staff. Do you have that same type of collaboration and camaraderie with your peers and perhaps with other roles within cybersecurity?
Absolutely. I think across the Australian government, we have many legs of cybersecurity. We have my role, we have the cybersecurity policy functions in our Home Affairs Department, we have our Australian Cybersecurity Centre, and we live in each other's pockets. So there's really very close collaboration. Australia is a small system, relatively speaking, so we all know each other probably a little bit too well at this point. In the broader community, I'm in constant contact with my colleagues. We share information about the type of issues that we're worried about. We coordinate with partners on putting cyber sanctions on cyber criminals. We coordinate on attributions. We say, we're really worried about this activity, we think we need to publicly disclose it. We get on the phone, we share information. And then when we go into the multilateral world, we spend a lot of time preparing positions, sharing notes, and coordinating with each other. So it's a pretty deeply integrated community. I think there's a very strong sense that there are a lot of decisive moments happening and that we need to come together. And as you both know, as everyone at CyberCon knows, these are transnational issues. No national government can come at these issues by itself. And I'd also add, one thing I've loved about this role is the engagement with industry. I think I spend a lot of my time talking to industry partners and we're all pulling in the same direction.
Yeah. Well, it's a funny story, still around that period of time, 2018, we were at DEF CON, Las Vegas, and it was one of the first time that while we were throughout all the village, the aerospace village and many others, there was an actual delegation from the White House come in and meet with the hacking community, which was a big step at the time because it was Spot the Fed at DEF CON. And since then, and we know a lot of people involved with CISA and all of that, has been, I think, many steps have been taken. One question I have, in your role, do you and your peer also talk about ethical issues such as AI, guardrails, and how Europe is moving, you're moving? Is that part of your...
Yeah, absolutely. So we all, I think, we all have sort of these two faces. We point into our own domestic system to be a voice in how we look at policy making around something like AI. That's a huge focus for us at the moment. But then look to shape how the AI ecosystem is developing globally. So Australia is often a price taker when it comes to those types of technologies. We have a lot of niche, smaller capability, but the big AI firms are usually operating out of the US. So I spend a lot of my time in advocacy and talking about with companies about what our expectations are, learning about how the technology works, how they're designing it, and trying to have a really open conversation. And oftentimes that does come down to an ethical question. There's no black and white lines. We should do it like this, we shouldn't do it like that. It's about how do we design technology that achieves all the upsides, all the positives, while mitigating the downsides. And I do think AI is it's a new frontier, but it's not unprecedented. We've dealt with these issues in a range of other technologies. We've dealt with the challenges of how you ensure the inputs are safe, secure, kind of moderated. How do you ensure that the software is doing what you think it should be doing, and how do you ensure that it's not taken advantage of by malicious actors? And that's not always cyber criminals. That's how, particularly with AI, things can be tweaked to compromise on human rights and on privacy. So that's a really big part of the global governance conversation, and one that we need to be seriously tackling, because the models are out there, they're being developed, they're being deployed, so there's a degree of urgency around it.
Right.
So I'm going to come down a bit from the AI and look more toward critical infrastructure, industrial control systems. We've had some conversations prior to the CyberCon and also in the last couple of days where resilience is a big topic.
Yes.
And I know there's been a lot of investment in the US around supply chain, CMMC, and understanding what you're buying, from whom you're purchasing it from, the risks involved in that, which if you start putting it in manufacturing or electrical grids or things like that, can have an impact on resiliency of the nation or the states within it. How does your role look at some of that and partner with some of the other possibility. Yeah.
Well, I think there's a real question there around our national resilience, but a lot of what I do in my role is talk to countries in the region, and they're usually at different stages of the kind of digital transformation than Australia. So I spend a lot of time in developing countries in Southeast Asia and the Pacific who are starting to think about these issues, but don't necessarily have strong policy or regulatory frameworks in place like we do here. And that means that particularly as technologies are coming into their critical infrastructure, as they're in things like industrial control systems, it's a challenge for us all, and supply chain resilience, supply chain attacks and understanding vulnerabilities in the supply chain is a challenge everywhere, but it's a particular challenge if that's not the way that you're geared up to think about things, if that's not the expectation on your critical infrastructure operators, if that's not a conversation that you have between government and industry. So I think we have seen the hard way that even when you're doing everything right, if you're operating infrastructure, if you're not conscious of your supply chain and the vulnerabilities down the stack, you can be just as exposed. Now, no one's pretending this is easy, right? Finding and developing confidence in your suppliers. A lot of industries work on trust when you're buying a product. Sometimes attacks are unknown even to the supplier you're working with. So there's no, if you just make more effort, you can find out about those vulnerabilities and mitigate them. It's a hard thing to ask, but I do think infrastructure operators are vastly more conscious of their supply chains than they were 3-5 years ago, and I think that's a good thing. There's a lot of great companies out there filling the gap and saying, so you've decided you want to know what's in your supply chain and helping you understand it, 2, 3, 5, 10 levels down. So I think we're getting better at understanding those risks.
Nice.
Yeah, well, and oftentimes, as you said, I don't want to sound like it's inevitable, but it's more about being ready. What if it happened? Yes. How do we react?
Yes.
And how do we react quickly? And can we react from your perspective together?
Yes.
Right.
That's a really important message at a conference like this, to say you can do your utmost, you can do your best, but never think you're safe. Never think that it won't happen to you. So plan out. When it happens, how do we respond? How do we recover? How do we get back up and running? How do we communicate? Being deeply involved in some major cyber incidents here myself, you don't want to be doing that after the incident. The more that you've prepared, thought it through, thought about second, third order consequences, the better. So no one should sit there and have their CISO say to them, don't worry, we're good. That's great. Love the positivity, but what if we're not good? How are we going to respond?
Yeah. Sean, can I have the last question? Because I know we're wrapping here. That's for a change, because usually you do.
I always get the last.
Yeah, I'm really interested in the cultural aspect of things, coming from sociology and how so many differences there are in the region, different cultures.
Yes.
And I think you have a pretty tough job to, sometimes the ethical aspect of it. It's, you can't really tell, philosophically speaking, this is good, this is bad. Again, it's a lot of gray. And some cultures, because the way they are, may see certain things in a different way. Is that a challenge?
Definitely, and I think in my travels, you've really got to be cognizant of the context. You cannot go in, and we talk to a lot of countries, we help a lot of countries. It has to be different in every place. I'll give you a couple of examples. In the Pacific, when I go in and talk cybersecurity, they also want to talk about, we now have connectivity to our most remote communities with very traditional, very religious cultures. We're worried about content. We're worried about what that is doing to disrupt our social fabric. Now, you can't say, oh no, I want to talk about cybersecurity, because it is all part of the same problem, the same question for many people in those countries. So we've got to talk the online safety issue. Another example, I think, is everyone is concerned about mis and disinformation and how that is proliferating online. There's some countries I visit where when they're talking about mis and disinformation, it is actually, they're talking about political speech they don't like. And they're wondering, well, what tools can their government use to limit that sort of what they don't see as constructive feedback. Now, we have to be really careful because we are just as concerned, and we have agencies like the E-Safety Commission here, but we're very clear that when we use our powers as it relates to content, it is subject to the rule of law, it is subject to review, to judicial review, it is subject to transparency requirements, and we do it very carefully. None of us want to get it into the realm of arbitrary application of power in cyberspace, and that's something we have to be very conscious of. The final point I'd say is I come from a national security background. I often talk from a security perspective. Most people in this region want to talk about the good things that digital technologies are going to bring for them. And they're worried about security in the sense of if that undermines confidence and the trust that their people have in their digital government services, etc., that's a problem. If it undermines their ability to access the global economy, that's a problem. What they're not necessarily, what doesn't necessarily resonate is going in and say, right, geopolitics, pick a side, pick a technology, don't use that, don't use that. It just doesn't work, it doesn't resonate. The end game here is about how do we get the most positive experience, most positive benefits of the digital world. So sometimes I have to sort of check my kind of pessimistic security perspective and say, no, actually, this is about how we maximize the benefits.
I love it.
Super interesting. Yeah.
Yep. Perfect.
I love it. Ambassador, it's fantastic to meet you. Hopefully not our last conversation. I have a gazillion questions. Maybe you'll join us again for another chat after the conference.
I'd love to.
Hope everybody enjoyed this conversation. I'm sure you have questions as well, and hopefully a few nuggets you can take with you as you think about how you look at cybersecurity in your own space, your own world. Stay tuned. Marco and I have lots more coming to you from AU CyberCon hosted by ASA, and lots more. Stay tuned.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
ThreatLocker is a zero-trust endpoint protection platform providing enterprise-level cybersecurity to organizations globally. With ThreatLocker, you only allow only what you need and block everything else, including ransomware. Learn more at threatlocker.com. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Sean and Marco's on-location event coverage conversations. Please take a moment to give the show a good rating and leave a comment. Remember to share this podcast with your friends, family, and colleagues. Come back for more conversations and follow Sean Martin and Marco Ciappelli as they continue their journey toward redefining cybersecurity and society.